Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try this again. We're going to try to stay calm, but this computer is freezing up more than Mitch McConnell right now. This new computer is absolutely worthless. I know we said on Friday that we're going to be sending it back, but we can't return it yet because we don't have a new one delivered to replace it. And then we would just be totally useless at this point. So, unfortunately, we have to keep kicking it with the new laptop until a new one arrives. But we've got the NFL games this weekend, or Thursday as well. We got the Thursday game. We've got uh I'll say a highly anticipated Michigan Texas matchup, a top 10 battle, but uh who knows how many top 10 battles Michigan's going to have this year from the Michigan side of that ranking, but we're going to try to go like we were promised to go live for all these big events, and then this new computer is useless. We're going to try to get a new one and go live this weekend for these games. Stay tuned to the Rem and Sam feed. It's gonna be a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible countdown as we try to locate something that's able to get what we need. Because make no mistake, right now we're shopping the deals, so we just gotta find something that works. But like I said, we're gonna do our best to the Thursday game. It's gonna be a close call for that Thursday game, but definitely business as usual podcast Friday night into Saturday, and then maybe Saturday we go live. Well, just stay tuned. Who knows what the schedule is going to be, because as I'm talking it out now, maybe drop it on Saturday and then going live might, maybe we just do it all in one. Who knows? Like I said, stay tuned. We're going to see what happens, what we're going to be going live for, if we're just going to be dropping a normal episode or not. But we've got the first week of the NFL picks draft this upcoming weekend as the NFL season starts. And we've got, like I said, the highly anticipated Michigan Texas matchup. That might be the number one, in terms of ranking matchup for the weekend. But Michigan's already dropping in the ranking. They started the season number 9. They're down to number 10 right now. So still in the top group, but they've now been passed by Missouri, which I don't know how many times that happened under the Harbaugh tenure. Well, there was those early years as well, too, where, we're not going to act like Michigan fans didn't get a little feisty there at the beginning of the Harbaugh tenure, but Tennessee versus NC State is a 14 versus 24 this upcoming weekend. But yeah, Texas at Michigan is by far the biggest matchup. And when was the last time Michigan even played Texas as well, too? That seems like it's been at least a couple of years. I know they had Bama in the playoffs, and it was like, man, Michigan and Bama hadn't played. I think that was the first matchup that they had played against each other since Brady was there. And that was a bowl game as well, too. So it wasn't even a regular. And I mean, Michigan, notorious for not necessarily seeking out the toughest non-conference opponents. So for a 12-team playoff, I think maybe they go, do we have a little leeway this year? Which, make no mistake, the 12-team playoff could not happen at a more perfect season. Harbaugh is left Michigan, and there's still enough talent. Like, there's still plenty of talent on the team. The secondary is definitely stacked. Will Johnson and Ari Page, if I'm getting that name right, he was look like he's going to be a monster this year for that Michigan secondary as well. But the offensive line under Sharon Moore, and we'll get to the quarterback, make no mistake. But I mean, the Harbaugh thing was right away. There's just a toughness and just, I mean, the way he constructs teams and his focus on team building has always been in the trenches, and he's always focused on the offense and defensive line and really building both of those sides of the ball up. But pause. But I mean, they lost a ton of talent at that area of the team. Make no mistake. I think all 5 of their offensive linemen went to the NFL. So there's going to be some growing pains there for, do we have to pause growing periods? Pause for a second. But the toughness aspect that Harbaugh brought to the team, it did seem like, oh, is that missing just right away in game 1? And again, I get the talent drop off from this year to last year. And again, the quarterback as well, too. And speaking of the quarterbacks, at some point he's going to have to make a call on who his starter is going to be, and just going to have to live with that decision. And it is week 1. It's Fresno State. I get what you're doing there a little bit. And it seemed like for a majority of the game, it was pretty defined that when Warren was in the game, it was going to be passing, and that when they were subbing in Alex Orji, it was basically a run play or something of that nature. There was the play early in the game where he throws a touchdown to Donovan Edwards, but that's in the red zone, not really a play where, I would say you're putting his passing on full display for him there. But in terms of just the momentum that your guy can build under center, you're going to have to give your full confidence to one of the quarterbacks at some point. But at least you have a couple of games in the season where it is to start the season where it is acceptable to maybe mess around with that position a little bit. You can, we've seen Clemson do it in the past. And I'm not saying this is equivalent to like a Trevor Lawrence. Was it Kelly Bryant? Was that the other guy? And I really liked Kelly Bryant when he played too. I can't remember who Kelly Bryant got benched for. Was it Trevor Lawrence, which is somebody else? But I was definitely a fan. I'm a fan of all the Clemson quarterbacks that end up getting benched. DJ Uiagalelei, even after 2 games at Florida State, make no mistake. My takeaway: put him in the NFL. That's the only thing that's wrong with DJ Uiagalelei. He just needs some, the NFL coaching. He's still got the arm talent, the stature. Checks a lot of the boxes that you'd want for a quarterback prospect. Maybe just not the right one, but definitely going to be an exciting Texas-Michigan matchup this year. And hopefully we don't see Arch Manning in this game, because if we see Arch Manning, that means that, it means, Quinn Ewers probably got hurt, or that Texas is destroying Michigan and it's the 4th quarter and there's no chance that Michigan's going to come back, and Arch Manning for 2 weeks in a row is going to see a little bit of playing time. But maybe that's more of the Trevor Lawrence, Kelly Bryant situation. Let's look that back up and just double check who that guy was there, because DJ Uiagalelei was in the mix when Trevor Lawrence was there. I feel like, or maybe he was just the guy that was supposed to succeed him, because Trevor Lawrence, number 1 high school quarterback. DJ Uiagalelei, don't forget. No, I'm telling you, checks the boxes. Danny Ainge, if he was an NFL GM, he'd still be taking a flyer on DJ Uiagalelei. So somebody give him a chance. Even hopefully he has a couple of games that turns this around. Yeah, Kelly Bryant played in 4 games in the 2018 season, and that was the year they won the national title as well too. Went undefeated. Kelly Bryant, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, doing his part. 66.7%. The season before, 65% completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 picks. And then he went to Missouri, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks the next season. But, dual threat guy could definitely, if he had managed to complete some passes, you could definitely do a lot of the playbook with the peak version of Kelly Bryant. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence, obviously the right move there. And, I don't want to get too dramatic with the Arch Manning hype, but if they played Arch Manning, would they win the national title? And I mean, again, Quinn Ewers is probably rightfully so going to be a 1st-round pick this year, but in the upcoming NFL draft, and Texas is definitely going to be a playoff team. I mean, especially with 12-team playoffs, but even a 4-team playoff, I mean, would still be a heavy, heavy favorite to make the playoffs. And again, still even winning the national titles with Quinn Ewers would not be super shocking. But I mean, do we all just kind of know that Arch Manning's a better quarterback? And maybe it's more like Pat Mahomes, Alex Smith type ordeal, where Alex Smith, like, clearly, and even maybe like even put any point in Alex Smith's career, like even peak Alex Smith, time machine him a couple years back and put him on that Chiefs team that last season before Pat Mahomes took over. And we all kind of, again, going in there was like, yeah, Pat Mahomes is clearly ready to take over, but Alex Smith is still capable enough where, he's still necessarily earned the right, and he's not playing bad, but he's kind of earned the right to still be that starter. And again, the NFL is not college. So, I mean, the Chiefs, they're going to move on. They're going to do their thing. And, we're the number 1 Pat Mahomes pod. So we're not questioning that whatsoever. But if Arch Manning was playing this year, I feel like, I mean, because again, just look through the top guys. I mean, Arch Manning could potentially just straight up be the best quarterback in college football. I mean, I'm saying like right now too. I know, he's always checking in at the end of games. They've got big leads. It's typically against, again, if they're winning by a lot, they definitely beat good teams by a lot too. But with they're winning by a lot, probably going to be just lower end talent on the field in terms of D1 talent, just in general. So it's not like we've seen Arch Manning in the DJ Uyunglele situation against Notre Dame. Who was the? It's bugging me what the timeline is for all these Clemson guys. It's hard to get all these guys straight, but it's not like he's even had that type of performance. Yeah, it was Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, he subbed in for Trevor Lawrence and ended up having the big game against Notre Dame. But I feel like if they turned over the ropes, I mean, Arch Manning would definitely be good. And I think everybody definitely has a ton of Arch Manning stock out there. And we just want to see the next Manning, the next guy up. I mean, it's like Bronny, everybody wants to watch Bronny. Everybody wants to watch Arch Manning. And I know people are going to be like, well, Bronny's not Arch Manning, but have you seen the clips of Bronny in the gym this summer? I forget which players. I think it was Talon Horton Tucker. He was going 1v1. Maybe Kelly Oubre as well too. Maybe, a bunch of clutch guys, but Jordan Clarkson maybe in the mix. But I mean, Talon Horton Tucker, not necessarily top end NBA talent, but in terms of one-on-one, you got to get a shot off against this guy, especially for Bronny's profile. Talon Horton Tucker, good defender, long arms, going to be a difficult matchup anyways for a smaller guard. And some of the clips, Bronny getting to his spot, getting the shot off, and that's not even what he's going to be expected to do on the Lakers. So maybe it's like, hey, Bronny, work on your roll. Let's get those spot up threes going. But I mean, he proved to be a good shooter. Pause. As well too at the NBA Combine and at the high school level. I know we necessarily didn't see all that translate in college, but most of the time, Bronny has proved that the 3-point shot, he's been able to knock it down. So seeing that he's expanding some of these games and some of the practice stuff, and just he's in the gym, he's constantly getting better. Arch Manning, that good Manning work ethic, he's got that, and he's grounded with that that good Manning family. He's good background kid, just good handshake, everything. So we know Arch Manning checks a lot of quarterback boxes that we really, really like. IT, cut all this out. We're going crazy. But anyways, we want to see Arch Manning in, and it's not anything against Quinn Ewers. Maybe if the transfer portal is something that they can do in the offseason, let's just make it in-season transfer portal. Who cares? Trade a guy. Make trades legal in college at this point. We have on NIL. Anything's NCAA is going to go away. Anything's going to be legal at this point. It's just going to be the two super conferences that are going to be running everything. So you might as well make trades, and we could trade. I mean, Michigan, if we could trade, if Arch Manning goes, make him the starter and trade Quinn Ewers to Michigan, at least we're back in the mix. Is like, oh yeah, this might be a lock for a playoff team, especially with the talent on defense. Probably, not the same offensive line, but again, with the experience, he's that offensive line, might look a lot better at the end of the season than it does right now. But again, that's a Harbaugh thing where he would definitely coach that up. And that's kind of the thing that, and like we were saying on Friday with Sam too, the thing that you just know the Chargers are going to have right away. There's going to be a toughness to that team that Harbaugh is going to bring. Because again, everywhere, it's not just Michigan. Niners, Stanford. Where was he at before Stanford? Urban Meyer was at Utah. Was Harbaugh at Fresno State? Maybe he was. Was that supposed to be the Harbaugh reunion bowl? But whatever mid-level school Harbaugh was at, like I'm sure they were way more tougher this season that Harbaugh was there than the season before. So that like when they play the Chiefs, for example, like we were saying, those are just going to be nasty games. He's going to have the game plan, and they're just going to be tough out. And the fact that they have a talented quarterback to just maybe the weapons aren't what they give him. But again, Herbert with Harbaugh's game planning, it's like, well, that's just a massive, and Harbaugh's game management as well too. I know Staley just is going to get the bad coach rap, but just like if he's a good game manager, they're probably in the playoffs and they're at least winning a playoff game or two, and maybe he'd last to see like it. It's all going to work out. They got Jim Harbaugh, but just that aspect alone, it's, can we make the right decision in the last 2 minutes of a game? And maybe the Chargers are just a 10-win team by a product of that. Maybe not, again, this version of the Chargers is a little bit different, but also the offensive line, if Slater's healthy and Alt's there, is a little bit better. Maybe the defense, if Harbaugh's coaching that up, that's better as well, too. Maybe the corners are playing better this year. So I know this is not necessarily a Chargers preview, but, we're locked in on our boy Harbaugh. So regardless, Sharon Moore, don't worry. We still got your back. We're just saying that, you know, the Harbaugh era, we just won the national championship. There's going to be some, emotions, some breakup emotions with the Harbaugh thing that maybe it's going to take a couple of games to exercise. And it would have been different if they had just gone out and dominated Fresno State, of course. But the fact that it's like, hey, you didn't look exciting against Fresno State, and there's a really good chance that after this Texas game, they're going to be 1-1, and it's just kind of going to be like, yeah, Michigan is definitely in a rebuilding year, which, I think with the quarterback position the way that it was going into the season, especially losing McCarthy, I mean, a lottery pick essentially in the NFL if you're calculating it that way. And it also doesn't really get any better with the additions of Oregon and USC in the Big Ten, because they play them both as well. Luckily they play them both at home. So they got USC at home in 2 weeks. So this Texas game and then Arkansas State and then USC. So make no mistake, they scheduled a breather in there between the two, but they've got Oregon November 2nd and then Ohio State to wrap up the season. And with the way USC looked, Miller Moss, I mean, is that Moss Miller? What's this guy's name? Mac Miller? I'm not really sure what their quarterback's name is, but the bowl game, off-season, spring game, just all the hype that's been built around him has, he definitely performed in that LSU game, and so did Nussmeier on the other side. Nussmeier, Carson Beck, is he even the best quarterback in the SEC? I know, again, he was the number one quarterback in the draft going into the season, but Nussmeier looked pretty impressive. And, I don't want to, this is not going to become a anti Carson Beck podcast. Make no mistake, we don't have anything against Carson Beck, but just the fact that he was so consensus, like the number one guy going into the season. And, Shedeur is most likely going into the NFL this year. And I don't know, just the idea of, I get that Carson Beck, again, checks a lot of boxes as a quarterback prospect. He's maybe a little bit taller, and the size profile for him versus Shedeur Sanders is a little bit different. And he's also produced a lot. Like the Georgia team is a super high level winning team. They had a great season last year. And I know the Alabama thing, and they necessarily didn't end up making the playoffs, but with the 12-team playoff, it's like, right now they're probably the favorite to win the national title. And again, his quarterback play is a large part of that. But, the Georgia team is a little bit different than going into the NFL, and you're the number one pick. And now, all of a sudden Carson Beck is on the Giants. And I don't know, just like the idea of Carson Beck in one of these bad quarterback situations is, to me, a little bit different than Shedeur Sanders in one of those situations, because we're already kind of seeing him transcend quarterback situation. I know, me and Sam, we were both super in on the Deion hype train to start last year. And make no mistake, I still have all the Deion stock. I know maybe I should taper my expectations as in terms of, but maybe not about in terms of like, the levels that he can climb as a college football head coach. Cause like, again, you can never count out Deion Sanders. Like, he can be the best coach in college football if he's, again, I don't think we'd all be shocked if Deion got to that level. But again, with Colorado, the state that it's in, the offensive line, the defense, the weapons are really good this year, especially if Travis Hunter's healthy, and Horn, like we were hyping him up as well too on Friday. Super all in on those guys. Those guys are amazing playmakers. But some of the other stuff, like we're already seeing Shedeur Sanders be a productive quarterback in a situation that's not ideal. And I just like the idea of him in one of those bleaker spots a little more than I like Carson Beck. And Maybe Nussmeier's another guy as well too, or maybe he's a guy that might need a good quarterback situation. And they're, again, quarterbacks that are like Anthony Richardson is a guy that, like I've said, one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that I think Anthony Richardson is going to have a really good season and can be a really good NFL quarterback is because Shane Steichen is there. And I think not just me, but like I think a lot of really smart NFL people think that Steichen is a really good coach, and coaches are always getting better. I think he can be, again, a chances to be one of the best coaches in the league. I really love him there in that position. So Anthony Richardson in that system is a lot different than Anthony Richardson on, I was going to say like the Vikings this year, but I was thinking Sam Darnold, but again, Kevin O'Connell, we kind of like that. But if he was just on a, like Saleh, if he was on the Jets, like the Jets have a lot of talent, but maybe that's an interesting test for Saleh. I guess, it's different coaching, again, veteran quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, it's all different. But, if he was just in a much worse situation, then I'm sure my feelings toward him would, and I'm sure if he was not on the Colts, my feelings toward him would be much different. But Carson Beck just seems like one of those guys I'd be much more confident in his ability, and any quarterback's ability, of course. But I do feel like, again, we've just seen in Shedeur not the ability to avoid the pressure. And I think some of the name stuff can get a little thrown. Well, I get, we're not doing quarterback previews for the NFL draft right now, but I do really like what I saw from Nussmeier in that game. And I think he's going to be, let's see if he's where Tankathon is at right now. And Tankathon, sometimes they can take a second to update, but our friends over at Tankathon are usually on top of it. So we'll see if they've got him as a first round type of guy. Yeah, see, right now, Carson Beck is 4 to the Giants. Shedeur Saunders 7 to the Raiders. Maybe it's just the Raiders, Vegas. They're still a little bit more flashy, but I don't know. I just kind of like that a little bit better. So right now, the 1, 2, 3, just in general. Oh no, I sorted by quarterback. So yeah, Carson Beck, Shedeur Saunders, and then Quinn Ewers, number 3. You see, they've got Connor Wegman, number 4, Jalen Milroe, 5, Jackson Dart, 6, and Nussmeier not on the board yet. So I don't know. Maybe the NFL people, maybe he's not in that range. Maybe I gotta see who the NFL people are eyeing. And again, it's week 1 for college, so things will definitely change. But definitely a fun game between LSU and USC as well. Let me see. Was there anything else that, I guess since we're ranting about college football quick, was there anything else that, should we pull up the rankings? Because like we said, Michigan dropped to 10. Ohio State still remains at number 2. I didn't check out any of the highlights because, there's just no reason to watch Ohio State be dominant this early. We'll go ahead and check in when, there's actually a game on and we actually need to watch it. But no need to subject ourselves to Ohio State domination this early in the season. Pause. Pause. But we got Georgia at 1, Ohio State, Texas at 3. Yeah, that seems about right. Alabama at 4. Kalen DeBoer trying to go strong. Kalen DeBoer, is he the next? It's going to be Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, and Kalen DeBoer as the great Alabama head coaches. They're number 4 right now. Notre Dame up 2 spots to number 5. Marcus Freeman, Ole Miss 6, Oregon 7, Penn State 8, Missouri 9, and then Michigan down to 10. So not the biggest mover in the top 10, though. Oregon drops 4 spots. And, a close game against Idaho is not necessarily going to win the committee over, but they're down to number 7. So the committee still has them above Michigan. But you've got Miami up 7 spots to number 12. You got Utah up to number 11, but Miami up 7 spots to number 12. And with the way Cam Ward looked in that game, I mean, you could definitely see them making a jump into the top 10. Again, USC with, we're just going with Miller Moss. We're going with Miller Moss for the name of the quarterback. They're up 10 spots to number 13, so they got to be the biggest riser of the week. Iowa up 4 spots. Okay, Cade McNamara. They got the 21 spot in the ranking, and then LSU, yeah, way down to number 11. But I mean, are they worse than Iowa? Iowa, they did put up 40 on, was it Ball State? We'll let the Club next season play out and see how that goes. But yeah, Michigan at Texas this week, and then Arkansas State, and then USC. So definitely looking forward to that Arkansas State game. That's going to be fun to see Michigan log a win there. And then again, that secondary, the defensive line with Mason Graham, like there's the defense is still really, and Wink Martindale, we got Wink Martindale as a defensive coordinator. Like it's going to be a tough out, make no mistake. But I thought the way the offensive line got pushed around by Fresno State is maybe not the most encouraging. And again, it's definitely there's a reason that there is uncertainty at quarterback, I'm sure, for Sherrod Moore. It's not just he hasn't necessarily made up his mind. Again, I'm sure we'll get to week 4 and he'll make a call at some point. But like a lot of people in the Michigan fan circles, like Alex Orgy, and I know, you get a quarterback that's capable of doing, just like, Davis Warren's not running around the way Orgy is. So pause, but we have to pause this guy's name every time. Maybe we need Warren to be the starting quarterback just so we don't have to say Orgy every time. But, it did seem like we had a chance to have a really dynamic quarterback going into the season. And then it's like, oh, he didn't necessarily, apparently he didn't win in camp enough to, be out confident enough and have Sherrod Moore's full confidence going into the season. But we're not counting Michigan out. Let's check the line. The last thing we'll do for college football is check the line for the Michigan-Texas game and see if it's worth a chance. Because, I mean, if it's like a touchdown, I mean, you gotta go. Yeah, I was going to say it might be 7.5, and it is Michigan plus 7.5, plus 250 on the money line. So betting on our team to pull off an upset is definitely not going to be the worst thing in the world. This is perfect. I almost like this better than, in terms of a betting standpoint, than being like the top dog. It's just, it can be 10 sometimes, but the nobody believes in us is definitely a fun place to be in. I'm right there with I'm almost in the nobody believes in them camp, but like I said, no Arch Manning for Texas this week. So Michigan still has a chance, and we'll try to be there live regardless of whether they win or lose. Maybe if they start losing, though, the computer will start acting up again. It'll pull another Mitch McConnell and freeze up. Who knows? But good luck to the Maize and Blue this weekend against Texas. And again, Texas at home, you can't really beat that. So Ohio State's the only of the major powerhouse, the only one of the 4 top 10 teams we play this year that we have to play on the road. So, we got them at home last year. We won the national title. I know they're going to be out for revenge, and they're going to be on their national title quest. And if Michigan and, they win the national title, the whole sign stealing thing, whatever, and then Ohio State goes out the next year and wins their national title, it's going to be a tough emotional thing for Michigan fans. So, that game it's a long ways away, but we're already looking at it very, very, very nervously. But the reason we're gathered here today, folks, is to talk about the Grammy nomination window closed this past weekend. It closed on Friday, August 30th, the day we were supposed to get A$AP Rocky's newest album. I think his 6th album. Yeah, August 30th was the day that the window closed. I think it's September 16th, 2023 to August 30th, 2024. And I did at one point look up the timeline for how the voting works and all that stuff, but I forget the day that they actually announced the nominations, and I don't know if that day was even announced itself yet. I know the voting windows and stuff, of course, are all out there, but that day I'm not sure if it's been revealed yet. But regardless, we're going to try to figure it out, folks, who is going to be nominated this year for the 2025 Grammys. Very excited. I would say probably the most I was going to say probably the most accurate, but all the award shows are definitely a little whack. And they all have their whack years as well too. So it's hard to judge them by the whack years. But the Killer Mike win last year, I'm all in. So that alone kind of has me back in respecting the Grammys taste a little bit anyways. And like I said, we got Killer Mike winning for best album. So let's just review the other nominations real quick. We had Killer Mike winning for Michael. Drake and 21 Savage got nominated for Her Loss. Metro Boomin with Heroes and Villains. Nas with King's Disease 3. And then Travis Scott with Utopia. So we got three pretty big album events in Her Loss, Heroes and Villains, and Utopia. But that's also like, a lot of classics right there. Like, it's a lot of quality. I know Utopia a little split in terms of the overall album, but I mean, definitely some classic Travis Scott songs in the long run are going to be off of there. And again, Killer Mike winning in terms of just overall quality. And same with the Nas, the whole King's Disease trilogy, 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, the first one winning a couple years ago. Nas's first win, which is crazy. But the second one and the third both securing nominations as well, too. So Hit Boy, 3-time nominated producer just for that. And I know, worked on other albums that have gotten nominated, but in terms of executive producing and being at the head, pause. So we are going to try to figure out from the field what is like going to be in consideration, and then kind of, what we think is locked in for the picks. IT has crunched the numbers. We don't really use AI over here at Rem and Sam. We use IT. They work hard late into the night. They crunch the numbers and they figured it out. And they put all of the different bigger, major albums this year into different tiers in terms of what is most likely to be nominated. And there's also some song suggestions here for the song categories as well that we'll mention at the end. But the first tier is, and we're talking mostly like what's going to be, in consideration. Maybe not these first couple of tiers. This first tier is definitely a lot of really good albums for sure. Maybe even great to, great's always weird because it's like, great, does it mean, is it going to have like the great longevity type thing? Or is it just, great in terms of quality? Like this person really did a great job with the album in terms of what we're saying. But, a lot of quality in these albums. But I think where the people are at in their career, maybe they're one step away. But I think this album was definitely like a good step forward for him, but not quite the step enough to get him in that this is going to be a Grammy nominated type album, if you get what we're saying. But it's like, yeah, this is definitely in the right direction for where they need to be headed. And I guess this first one's not really an album, more so a mixtape, but Kings of the Mischievous South, Volume 2 by Denzel Curry. His last album would have been the album with Walkin' on it. And obviously a bunch of other great songs, but we will double check the name of it because I know I'm going to butcher it. Melt Your Face Off like the guy from Indiana Jones or something like that. But Melt My Eyes, See Your Future was the album, his latest actual like studio album in 2022. Again, this King of the Mischievous South Volume 2 is technically a mixtape. It's King of the Mischievous South. I kept wanting to say Kings because it's all features every song. It's, stacked with a bunch of great people, too. A$AP Rocky, Juicy J, Mike Dimes is on a song, Ty Dolla $ign. Armani White is back for another song as well, too, near the end of this album. Again, great album, but I think it's still... Denzel, he's still one step away, I think, from being in the mix. And I think if his next studio album is really in line with the quality that he's been dropping in these last couple, then his name is going to be right in the mix. We've got Hardstone Psycho by Don Toliver. And this would have been, I believe, his first album to go #1 on the hip hop charts, if I'm not mistaken, if IT wrote that down correctly. And I know, again, this was kind of an album where maybe people were a little bit split on the quality, but I really liked it. And I thought there was a lot of great songs on it. And again, the progressive little jumps in popularity that Tolliver has been making in his career, it's, he's moving up where he is obviously mainstream at this point, but is going to be in at least in that, and he might already be in that, it's, we don't, you start doing the A list, B list, C list is, how big do you have your A list and all that stuff. But let's see what his streams are on Spotify right now. I think he's in the 25 million a month. And I guess that's not really like the main judge of the what we're talking about, but just in terms of he's a couple of moves away from like becoming that kind of big, like undeniable hip hop artist where it's like, yeah, Don Toliver is at the top of the game and you kind of have to just respect where he's at in his career. And he's up over 30 million right now on Spotify. I was going to say, I thought that ranking would put him a little bit higher, but it's a stacked list, make no mistake. But again, if his next album is really, really good, obviously, if anybody drops a banger album, it's going to get nominated. But I think his status could start getting to a point where, again, he would just be one of the more undeniable guys, where Denzel Curry is still a little bit of an underground guy. Like West Side Gun with And Then You Pray For Me, the follow-up to his album Pray for Paris, which great album, but I don't think quite from top to bottom. I don't think one it was quite, Pray for Paris, it's pretty close. I think Pray for Paris probably start to finish a little bit better, but I don't think this album was quite, again, as undeniable. Same with another Griselda guy, Benny the Butcher, Everybody Can't Go. His first album with a major studio label, his fourth album, studio album overall. Both really quality projects. And again, Benny the Butcher in a major label, seeing him still deliver quality in that setting. And, you hope a guy continues to deliver quality as his quality of his, ability to produce the music in his surroundings get better. But seeing him elevate and seeing the music still continue to get better, but it's still like, hey, there's still like a level or two you could go before you get into that, and, Killer Mike's at a different stage where it's not just you're an underground guy that drops a great album and all of a sudden the Grammys are nominating you. It's he had that career run in the 90s and was, a mainstay in hip hop. It still is. But again, if we're looking at the numbers, we're talking about that side of it as well, too. Benny the Butcher would need to be, you need to have a different kind of run the next couple of years to have the Killer Mike type album. But I think as like the underground guy that had the great run, like a couple other guys we might mention later on, could definitely get in that tier. But another album that I think went underrated and is just not going to, make no mistake, it's just not going to get talked about. Nobody listened to it. But I thought it was, again, another quality project where if the quality and maybe the next project sort of catches on in the culture a little bit, then maybe he's in a spot where he's looking at that Grammy nom, and that would be Mustard with Faith of a Mustard Seed. And this album, again, did not perform as well as Perfect 10 did. And I would not say it's as good as Perfect 10. There's a couple of songs where, maybe the replay value isn't as strong. And maybe it's not as diverse as well, too. It kind of stains. And it's a great mood as well, too. It's a mood that I love for an album. But if you're just trying to, again, nitpick it to the top, the top couple. And I think a lot of people nitpicked a lot out of Faith of a Mustard Seed. But I thought it was enough quality from the project where the next one I think could be a real one to keep an eye on for Mustard. And he's another guy too, where maybe the Metro Boomin solo album type deal for him is not the next album that really gets in that type of look. Maybe it's like the Metro Boomin, like 21 Savage type, the earlier Without Warning. And, like the album that he did with Future this year as well, too, where he's hooked up with another artist. And yeah, his name as a producer is enough to be the, an A-list tag team guy. It's enough to like make a duo out of it, basically. And I think there was rumors that there was a Ty Dolla Sign project with him and Ty Dolla Sign. And, they've obviously been frequent collaborators throughout. But I was thinking for him, like a Mustard Roddy Ricch album could be the type, like, because I know Roddy Ricch especially has, the man's had a lot of success with the awards in the past. He's dropped amazing stuff. And West Coast guy, him and Mustard, again, like Ty Dolla Sign, have definitely worked together a lot in the past. And that could be an artist where if he wants to go that future Metro Boomin route, I could really see them, because Ballin' as well too is a great song. And maybe there's where, future, like we've seen for his career, he can get melodic, but he can also drop bars. And I guess Roddy Ricch can kind of do the same. Obviously, I don't think, Roddy Rich's future, maybe not yet, but I think could definitely be a great teammate to help propel Mustard up into the next step. And also Offset's album, Set It Off. I'll mention that as well too. Offset dropped 2 albums that went top 5, and again, a lot of quality. Dropped a song with Travis Scott off of this one that was a big hit as well too. So had the hit, has had a couple of really successful albums, and if he drops like another start to finish banger project, I think the name power for Offset, and the Migos history as well too. He's done a lot in his career where I think people could be looking his way if his, if he does like some good storytelling type stuff, Offset start doing the, you gotta be careful throwing around mature rap, because we're not saying anything about Offset like that, but just because we don't have a better term for that type of storytelling type stuff. But the next tier of album is going to be albums by like major guys that, make no mistake, people will just either didn't listen to, or the quality maybe wasn't there like it has been for these guys' careers. Perfect example, Insano by Kid Cudi, which I'm not gonna lie, there are a couple of songs off this album that do have a lot of replay value. Porsche Topless, which was dropped as a single. The song that he does with ASAP Rocky is pretty good as well too. The Little Yachty song has definitely been frequently popped up in the shuffle a lot. And then there was another one, Pharrell and Travis Scott, At the Party, is not bad. Oh yeah, and Blue Sky, that's the one I was thinking of. That might be the best song off the album. And that's honestly like a really, really high quality Kid Cudi song. But I think in terms of, Kid Cudi, make no mistake, it's not Man on the Moon. But speaking of not living up to past albums, Welcome to College Grove 2, Lil Wayne and 2 Chainz. And maybe these guys are all just victims of their own catalogs where they drop too much quality music. And it's like, well, again, maybe there's a couple of songs. Same with Welcome to College Grove. Like, Long Story Short, I think is the name. And then there's a song with Usher as well, too. That's pretty good. Transparency, 21 Savage, Big Diamonds. I have that one saved in a playlist. I haven't listened to that one in a second, though. I don't really remember how that one goes. I think, yeah, the Usher song has that one's been on replay a little bit recently. But again, why listen to Welcome to College Grove, the second one, when you could listen to the Carter 3 or 2 Chainz? I need to do more 2 Chainz. 2 Chainz is definitely one of the blind spots in my catalog. But yeah, you could definitely do better with Lil Wayne than Welcome to College Grove. Also, Blockbuster by Busta Rhymes, which, again, another fun album. Songs that are super fun, but not necessarily, I don't think, songs that we were expecting from Busta Rhymes, and not the tone of album. There's a song with DaBaby on it where and the DaBaby feature, it's really fun. DaBaby really goes off in that verse, but you're listening to him rap over that beat, and you're like, oh yeah, this album should be like a DaBaby album. This is not a Busta Rhymes album. But not gonna be Extinction Event Level 2. Did I say that right? Extinction Level Event 2, which is the album he dropped a couple years ago. He took like 8 years off and then dropped that one. That one got a nom, and that one's got some incredible songs on it. The Kendrick Lamar feature, Mary J. Blige. There's classic album in the Busta Rhymes catalog. And I would say the two extinction level events are the albums out of Busta Rhymes that I listen to the most. But this Blockbuster Rhymes one as well too. Blockbuster one has been in rotation a little bit. There's a Meek Mill Rick Ross collab album that got dropped this year that, make no mistake, it just went overlooked. Too Good to Be True. It was Too Good to Be True. The Rick Ross Meek Mill collab album. Probably not going to be up for a Grammy nomination this year. The next tier before we get, I guess we got one more tier to go. Hold on, folks. We got one more after this one. Do we want to switch the order? It's a good thing I scrolled up. We may switch we may do a order switch of the tiers on the fly. This next tier is, yeah, I think this might be the right move because we just did legends that, maybe it didn't work out. And this one is, the album definitely did work out, but again, there's only 5 spots we can give it to. So these are kind of, I guess these are kind of like the honorable mention albums a little bit for the nom. But again, maybe some of the other albums we mentioned too with the next step up might be some honorable mention-y. Because like the Denzel Curry album, West Side Gun as well too, I think it'd have a pretty sneaky case. Oh, we forgot to mention 101 by Gunna in this Gunner. He needs to yeah, we forgot to mention IT, cut this out. We forgot to mention the Gunna album in this tier, but yeah, maybe there's a couple more in there that are, and I guess the next tier is going to have a couple other honorable mentions in this one, but these are, we'll get to the next tier. These are albums that, great albums, just didn't quite make the cut, starting with 21 Savage American Dream, which when I went to do some initial research to kind of, again, double check, see what's in the mix, and see, I was mainly checking to see if we had odds as well. Did we already have odds for the 2025 Grammys? But we don't have nominees yet, so I guess we don't have odds, but it didn't seem like there was any preemptive stuff, at least for the rap categories. If I'm missing it out there, slide into the DMs with some links because, we're make no mistake, we're always trying to make a buck. But the 21 Savage album, obviously it's 21 Savage. He's going to be in the mix, but Google now, when you do the Google searches, they have the AI assistant thing that can kind of do like a recap search for you. And I guess I don't even know if it's like a recap. It just like gives you its own, AI starts talking to you when you're doing the Google searches. And I was searching, what's going to be on the table for the 2025 Grammys for the best rap album, blah, blah, blah. And it gave me American Dream by 21 Savage, Pink Friday 2 by Nicki Minaj, Scarlet by Doja Cat, and then another album that we won't quite mention yet because it's in another tier. But the other 2 albums are also in this tier as well. But the 21 Savage album, I think, is in this tier, but definitely in the honorable mention category as well, too. There's a lot of songs on this that I think are really, really great. And when we get to the best song nominees, especially like best melodic song, I think some of the songs off this album could really have a good case. Letter to My Brother. I was going to say Letter to My Brother. Again, might as well just keep doing should we just commit to hard R after saying Gunner? But See the Real is also great. Prove It with Summer Walker. Just Like Me with Burna Boy. Like all those songs could definitely be in consideration for that category as well too. And there's, some other songs that could be in considerations for other categories, but I just don't think it quite had the strength to get into the best album territory. And maybe we'll bring it back up as well too when we mention what we've got down for the potential nominations, but it didn't quite make the cut. Like we said, Pink Friday 2 by Nicki Minaj. This album did crazy well for at least albums over the last couple of years. If we were comparing it to albums that dropped this year, I think it basically did better than most of them besides the Eminem album, which is also in this category. But If we were just going like last couple of years, because it dropped in 2023, obviously Utopia was the biggest album that year, but did better than Vultures as well too. So Nicki Minaj outperforming Kanye. Who knew what would who knew that day would come? Pause. But also did better than the 21 Savage. Did she do better than both of the Kanyes combined? Should we do some quick math? Sorry, people, we're gonna do math on the fly real quick. We're gonna see if Nicki. Oh, I don't think she quite did. She would. So Pink Friday 2, I think we're doing first week numbers. First week, however they calculate the units now, would they add up the streaming and the sales and all that stuff? She sold like 228,000 units, and Vultures 1 and 2, both albums combined first week at 255. So, I mean, make no mistake, Nicki Minaj still a superstar. I still think for the people that replay the Nicki Minaj, because she's definitely, like I said, a superstar. It's just maybe our personal rotation. Maybe she's another blind spot artist, but there's the J. Cole song on there that is not bad. And Drake feature, a couple of great features that'll always keep Nicki Minaj relevant to a bunch of different groups. But the sales were there, maybe not quite the Grammy nom for Pink Friday 2. And then also Scarlet by Doja Cat, which is another one I really looked at and thought, ooh, could the Grammys go there with this one? Because I do really like this album. I threw this album on in the gym the other day just to kind of remind myself, because I said I liked it. I hadn't listened to it in a while, but I threw it back on and listened to the whole thing. So, like I'm saying, I did like it. I don't know how many of the boys out there are listening to Doja Cat, but maybe more than I'm giving credit to. Maybe I'm just the stubborn old friend circle down here. But I don't think, again, quite enough for Doja Cat. Death of Slim Shady, the biggest album of the year. Again, if we're looking at that first week number, that opening week for Eminem, which for him, again, great to see, the superstar power is, because I think the last couple of albums, and, I'm sure those albums did, great in terms of sales and numbers and all that stuff. Eminem could probably just drop whenever he wants and do fine. But to actually have like the actual rollout with the singles and the hype and the music video was a pretty fun thing. And then, getting a mature, and then, we're not anti-Eminem, of course. We love Eminem, but again, just seeing that side of Eminem was definitely fun. The story that he lays out between him and Slim Shady, but I don't think Eminem is going to get the nom either. I mean, we're just going through legends like crazy. Pause. But I mean, 21 Savage off the board, Nicki Minaj off the board, Eminem off the board, Doja Cat off the board. We brought up Vultures 1 as well too, another big album event of the year, but Vultures 1 might not get nominated for other reasons. But if we're just talking album quality, again, big event, Carnival, huge song, but I don't think Kanye quite had enough from the Vultures 1. And maybe it's another thing where, Donda was, I think, if we're just talking like, do you replay the whole album? Definitely like a little too long, but the quality is there throughout, where I think the Grammy nom is totally fine. I get there's a lot of great songs on Donda, but maybe this is one where maybe just combine Vultures 1 and 2 and put out one, pretty good album. And then he ends up taking off like the best songs on Vultures 2 off of the streaming services, at least for Spotify. I don't know about Apple, and I didn't look into why, but I'm assuming sample clearance issues. Nobody wants to clear their samples for Kanye anymore. But Sky City off the board for streaming, Fried off the board, Lifestyle, the Lil Wayne feature off the board. So 530 still hanging in there is fun. Bomb, if you guys are into that. But yeah, unfortunately, Vultures 2 got depleted and Vultures 1. And Kanye not making a Grammy appearance this year. Another legend that this was another tough omit. Maybe the two toughest omits for like the big name legend people albums that we had to cut. Megan Thee Stallion's album, Megan, and the peak songs on this album, we'll get to the song categories. The peak songs on this album, I really, really like, but maybe not steady enough throughout to quite earn a best album nomination. Because again, it is a best album nomination. And you can get that nomination a couple of different ways. Like we were saying, Utopia is an album that people were split on the quality maybe throughout that album, but that's the biggest album. That was by far the biggest album last year. It was huge. It was huge. Can we get Shane Gillis to do the Trump do huge? But I mean, I pretty much like doubled any album that in terms of the numbers for this year. The Eminem, like we were saying, was maybe not even quite up on that Nicki Minaj number as well. Let's see. Let's double check that real quick. And the Utopia number. So again, with the way they calculate it now, Utopia was at 496,000 units. Pink Friday too at 228. We're just impressed by what Nicki Minaj is still able to do it. Because again, the numbers right now are tough for some of this hip hop stuff. But Slim Shady at 281. So, Utopia way over anybody this year. It's like you got to put respect on Utopia's name for that performance. It's got to get the nomination. So, I don't think Megan quite lived up to that level where the great songs are great, but I don't know if it quite did enough to get the nominations. So, like we were saying, yeah, you can get it. You can get it for the mega album event, the sort of the Nas, like the King's Disease, the Killer Mike Michael, where yeah, obviously all these albums do have to have a certain level of quality. That's like we're not mentioning every album here. And like I should also have said this at the beginning, but this is not like a ranking either. Albums. We probably will do like a best albums of 2024 ranking near the end of the year, but we're actually trying to we are actually trying to accurately predict what could potentially happen at the Grammys. But we just wanted to go through and make sure we're mentioning what is all potentially on the table, like we were saying. But Megan Thee Stallion, like I did really enjoy this album. Unfortunately, I don't think it was quite enough. And then this is the tier break right here. This is the last legend that we take off, the boss level legend that we have to cross off for Grammy nominations. And Kendrick Lamar took on this boss this year. So the Rem and Sam podcast will do it as well too. Drake's For All the Dogs. I don't think it's a controversial take to say that Drake is not going to get the Grammy nom. But again, when you go through and look at, and we haven't even gotten to the list of what those albums are going to be. And when we go through the list, like these are great albums. It's gonna make sense. But the fact that we are in a place right now where Drake, Megan Thee Stallion, 21 Savage, Kanye, Nicki Minaj, Eminem, Doja Cat. We didn't even mention J. Cole either. Might delete later. I get that album's a little bit different. It's, it's still out there for people to consume and digest and talk about, but it's a little bit different where, it's the sort of the cutting room floor of what is potentially his next album. If the fall off ever ends up ever happening. J. Cole's the only ever person we were hoping for the fall off. Like, J. Cole, please. It's any day now. The fall off needs to happen. But double entendre. J. Cole knows he knows what we're talking about. But yeah, that album unfortunately not gonna get considered either. But all these legends have dropped music this year, and none of them are potentially going to get the nomination, which is pretty crazy. So moving into what those albums actually are going to be, I think there's a couple of lock it in, this is definitely going to happen picks. I think Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q is a lock to get nominated, and we're not going to pick winners yet. We'll actually wait to see what our options are before we start picking what is going to win. But I mean, this is definitely a strong contender for the win. So it's going to be a lock to get nominated. Vince Staples, Dark Times is a lock as well too in my eyes. And this would be a first-time nomination. I think a first-time Grammy nomination in any category for Vince Staples, which is just kind of crazy for the strength of the catalog that he's had, which again is kind of like we're saying, obviously he's not, hasn't had the Killer Mike run. Killer Mike's an all-time great. Vince Staples is, an all-time great at this point. But, Killer Mike has been in the game for, one of the OG guys. And had that run, Vince Staples, where he's built that credibility, built that quality. And he again, like we're saying, has just kind of become undeniable at this point. So, I don't know if Don Toliver compares to Vince Staples, not necessarily a stylistic comp, but in numbers as well too. Vince Staples doesn't put up the numbers that Don Toliver does. But you get what we're saying. There just becomes an undeniable aspect where Utopia with Travis Scott, where, and if Don Toliver drops a Utopia in terms of numbers, that would be crazy. And I'm not putting it past him. I just, I wonder what the odds would be on that at this moment. But, Vince Staples, Dark Times, a lock. I think the Common Pete Rock album is a lock. Auditorium Volume 1. Common, I mean, like Schoolboy Q as well, too. Both these guys have histories with the Grammys. Schoolboy Q, I believe, 3 nominations at this point. No, I think just 2. But we're already locking in the Blue Lips one. I'm telling you, that one's minus odds. And Vince Staples is even odds, if not minus odds, as well, too, to both get nominated if it's out there. In Common with the history, with Pete Rock as well, too. And Pete Rock, I was looking at some of the potential albums on the horizon. It's like Pete Rock's going to executive produce a De La Soul album. He's going to produce another album, too. I forgot who the legend was. It's like he's going to do like an AI Tupac album or some legend that is, was it E40? No, I don't know if he was doing the E40. Somebody was doing an E40 album. There was talk about it, but just Pete Rock is like dipping into the 80s and 90s and just pulling out rappers' paws and just going to start making great albums. And the Common one is, I guess, not really 90s, 2000s, but another potential album that gets Common back in the mix. And this one, maybe not a lock, but again, history with the Grammys, another super amazing quality album. And I think amongst the field, like we were saying, the album compared to some of these albums that the names dropped, I think the quality of Rhapsody's Please Don't Cry is enough where the name power of some of the other people is not quite overpowering enough in my mind. And Rhapsody as well, too, has that name power in the Grammys. Like we're saying, she has a nomination in her back pocket already. So wouldn't be surprised to see her get another one with this latest album. So you get 5 Grammy nominations for Best Album. We have 1 spot remaining. And this is definitely, to me, the trickiest one because I feel really confident about the first 3, Schoolboy Q, Vince Staples, and Common. And I do feel I'm like 80-20. I've really talked myself into Rhapsody getting the 4th Grammy nomination. I think we're still, we might be a couple months away from getting this announcement. So the anticipation will definitely be killing us. But the last and 5th and final spot, we've got a 3-way tie for the 5th and final spot. It's a lot of numbers, but we've got 3 albums to choose from. Speaking of big album events, the first one is We Don't Trust You by Future and Metro Boomin. And this was the other album that the Google AI threw at us. So the 4 that they threw at us were American Dream by 21 Savage, Pink Friday by Nicki Minaj, Scarlet by Doja Cat, and We Don't Trust You by Metro Boomin, which again, from the name power, makes a lot of sense. All 4 of those artists have Grammy nominations in their history already. All of them dropped, like we were saying, stellar albums that did well and all, had different moments as well, too. I think maybe, Pink Friday, maybe not quite the moment that We Don't Trust You had, but still would not be shocked, like, in any combination if we saw those names in there. But I think that 4 together, it was like a little like, oh, I don't know if that's necessarily the order that we want. Again, with that 4, maybe we get one of the Schoolboy Q, Vince Staples, and or Common album in the mix just to, at least get a good one in there. But, we get the Like That song, the Kendrick Lamar verse, sparks the rap beef, biggest, maybe not that song, obviously, biggest moment of the year, but that album being a part of the biggest moment of the year. And I guess you could say that maybe if you want to make the case for All the Dogs for Drake, you go, well, that album as well, too, technically sparked the biggest event of the year with the first person shooter mode and getting the disses started there. And, there is again, if we're talking about albums being too long, like we talked about it when this album dropped with Sam, it was really the number one problem. If you cut the best songs out of this album, and honestly, the Scary Hours edition as well too, if you take a couple of those songs out and if we made a custom, let's do a custom For All the Dogs album real quick. Because if he had had the Rem and Sam podcast to edit this album, there may be a chance that Drake would not be snubbed and not be left out. So Virginia Beach to start, I think is a pretty good opener. I think that works. I don't think we have to cut that, but we've got Amen by Tizo Touchdown and Calling for You by 21 Savage, which the 21 Savage song, I do actually really like that song. And I think maybe the public, maybe you guys like the Tizo Touchdown song a little bit more, but let's table both of those for right now. Then Fear of Heights, then Daylight. So, I mean, right away, we got 4 songs right off the bat, right after Virginia Beach that maybe if you find, any group of people, like they have one song out of that group of 4 that they really like. Then you go to first person shooter mode, then IDG with Yeet. We're not going to swear. My little cousin listens to this, and if we start swearing, our aunt's going to get mad. It's just what it is. So we're going to keep it clean. But he's got the song with Yeet. He's got 7969 7969 Santa. Which is not bad either. We could definitely keep that one in. Bahama Promises, I like. See, some of the songs that I like, though, I feel like as I'm going through it, maybe the people, maybe they wouldn't have resonated with the people. And he might have been doing a thing too, where maybe there's certain features that he didn't want to cut out as well too. He kind of left everybody on the album. But, if it's Virginia Beach to Calling for You to First Person Shooter to Slime You Out to Bahama Promises, Tried Our Best, What Would Pluto Do, 8 a.m. in Charlotte. And see, the problem is you couldn't really add those other songs on too beforehand because if you're doing a perfect For All the Dogs, you have to have Stories About My Brother on it. But I'm pretty sure he recorded that after he dropped the album, right? So you couldn't have had that on the initial release. And I don't know if he recorded all of these afterwards, but maybe You Broke My Heart as well too, which I think you also have to have that on the album, and Evil Ways with J. Cole. But again, you couldn't even do that on the initial release. So, there is a world where, again, this album is pretty good, but unfortunately, Drake is just gonna have to take another L, and it is what it is. He'll be back with the next project, maybe, but clip it and send it to Drake. Put it on the poster. But the other 2 albums that this I think could potentially come down to for that last spot is, and I know I'm going to butcher this name, but Juanta. That was not good. IT, edit that out and just put whatever it is over the top. But the newest Danny Brown album and the newest JPEG Mafia album, I Lay Down My Life for You. And they dropped a collab album earlier in 2023 called Scaring the Hose that, I mean, if that dropped in this Grammy period, I mean, lock it in. That album's a easy nomination, but unfortunately didn't get the look in the 2023 class. And like we said, we read those noms, Heroes and Villains is, I know Sam would make the case for it. And I think having that in there is perfectly fine. Her Loss was great. King's Disease, we were saying. I think they pretty much got it right last year. But the quality of that album, yeah, that album definitely was enough to get the look. And because that album was so good and they dropped amazing quality projects after, they're making the moves that I feel like you have to start noticing it for best album conversation if you're the Grammys. So if you had to choose between one of them, if I had to choose an album, I'd probably choose the JPEG Mafia album, but I want Danny Brown to get the nomination. Danny Brown's a cool guy, and the man has earned it up until this point in his career. But I think you would have to narrow it down to the JPEG Mafia album, and then at that point it becomes JPEG Mafia versus Future Metro Boomin. So I don't know. Do we have to leave that up to the fans? See, if we were doing this live, we can ask the chat, but unfortunately, we'll just have to see what the response is afterwards. But For the actual nominations, again, we had the Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips, Dark Times by Vince Staples, The Auditorium Volume 1 by Common and Pete Rock, Please Don't Cry by Rhapsody, and either We Don't Trust You by Future and Metro Booming, or I Lay Down My Life for You by JPEG Mafia, which, if we had to pick, I mean, it's probably going to be the Future Metro Boomin album. Biggest album event of the year. So, the Slim Shady in terms of numbers, but just in terms of what it ended up doing for the culture, definitely the number one. So I feel like, again, with the Utopia sort of corollary, you'd have to get it on there. But shout out to Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia, both amazing albums this year. And Scaring the Hose as well, too, was Scaring the Hose Volume 1. So if it's a Volume 1, that means Volume 2. And if they both drop the collab project, banger project, I mean, and these guys have great catalogs, but great, just consensus, great projects between the two of them in this last cycle. And the next one could really be on the watch list for, again, if we had these long shot odds, DRF Sportsbook, if you ever want to fire back up again and start a new sportsbook, get some new odds up there. If we could bet on who's going to get nominated for the Grammys, and then potentially, afterwards, obviously, if we could bet who would win, which if DRF was still around, RIP, they would definitely have those odds up there, which if you need odds, BetStamp, shout out, Pure Vita, shout out. I don't think Pure Vita has a sports book at this point, but some cool bracelets anyways. So links are all in the description. But if I wish we could bet on who would get nomination, because, an album like that, obviously you can't bet at this point because we don't even know if they're going to actually end up making it, but be a really long shot bet. But if it dropped, that would be a fun one to see, what potential odds could, and these two albums too, as well, too. As well, 222, as well, 2222. But it would be fun to see where these albums would end up. So that's where we have what we have for the Grammy nominations at this point. And like I said, I feel really good about those. And honestly, I do think that Future Metro Boomin album gets the nod. And I feel good about, as we talked it out, I feel good about all five. I think Schoolboy Q, lock it in. Dark Times, lock it in. Common, lock it in. Rhapsody, lock it in. Metro Boomin, Future, lock it in. Back-to-back years for Metro Boomin, a powerhouse. The man's a powerhouse. Sam, I mean, we know maybe Sam just has the Midas touch with his fandom. Maybe we need to look into that, because Pat Mahomes, Tatum just won the finals. Metro Boomin's going to go back-to-back Grammy noms, potentially. I guess Chelsea is the one. Chelsea's the one thing that's holding him back. We don't know anything about soccer, but from what he's been saying in the soccer corners, it's maybe not great for Chelsea, but it maybe arrows pointing up as well, too. We'll check back in this week, because we will have a full-on soccer corner again this weekend. We will be business as usual with the pod, normal time, but maybe also live as well, too. So stay tuned to the feeds at Rem and Sam Podcast. And we will have promise something special this weekend for the games. But I mean, in the future, like we're saying, the live streams, they're coming, folks. When we get the new computer, when we're able to get this stuff processed and fired up. And I think we were able to do a normal episode. We got through a good rant there. Once we got to ranting, it's like we forgot the computer starts freezing up. But it's good to get at least one clean run without it pulling a Mitch McConnell and freezing up again. So shout out to Mitch McConnell for really being the biggest loser of this episode, unfortunately, getting about 4 or 5 just random drive-by shootings throughout. But I think that'll about wrap it up. We will call it a day there. And like I said, we'll be back doing picks and more good stuff this weekend. So follow the feeds at Rem and Sam, at Rem and Sam Podcast. We're out there. We're all over the place. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. So, social media, the internet. We are on the internet at Rem and Sam Podcast. That's where you can find us. So thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.